All right, everyone, thank you for tuning in. My name is Kyle Johnson. I'm the Digital Communications Specialist for the Indiana Office of Tourism Development, and we're excited about today's webinar, Agritourism, a growing segment of the tourism industry. Today, our next webinar, by the way, is going to be August 28th. It is titled Revamping Gulf Tourism in the Hoosier State, and it will be hosted by our own Noelle Zidlick. If you can, please register for that and tune in. It should be a great look at Gulf tourism and all of the ways you can promote it in Indiana. Today, we are thrilled to have Kimmi Devaney. Kimmi is the Agritourism and Livestock Programs Manager for the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. She's been with ISDA for 4 years, and she's been a great resource for our office and agritourism providers around the state. We're thrilled to have her, and her email address is here on the screen. And if you have questions throughout the presentation, we ask you submit those through the chat, and we will answer them at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kimmi and let her get going with the webinar.
Thank you, Kyle. Good morning. As you said, my name is Kimmi Devaney, and I'm very excited to be here with you all today. So we're going to go over a few resources for agritourism operators. Now, some of these are going to be more relevant to folks that are just starting out than those who have been there in the business for a while, and vice versa. So it should be a good mix for you to share with your stakeholders in your area. So let's start off by defining what is agritourism. We define agritourism as those activities that bring the general public to the farm for agricultural-related activities. So this can be corn mazes, orchards, U-pick berry operations. U-pick also includes orchards, Christmas tree farms, etc. General farm tours. We group wineries and breweries into the mix, farm markets, and many more activities. There are many, many reasons why farmers would choose to diversify into agritourism. And as you talk to farmers in your area that are participating in this realm, you'll find that each of them chose to do so for different reasons. On your screen, you'll see 3 of the major ones. Those of you that are tied to the ag industry may be aware of how bad commodity prices have been in recent years. And with that, farmers are looking for ways to diversify their income stream. And sometimes they're also looking to diversify their income stream because they want to bring another family member back to the farm, and they need to make sure they have the income to do that, to support that additional family. Many of them, I think I'm safe in saying all of them that participate in this space also have an interest and a passion for education. They want to connect the general public to where their food comes from. We know that there's a lot of interest from consumers in knowing this information and connecting really with their agricultural roots out on the farm. For those consumers that have children and that may live in the city, it's a great opportunity for them to showcase perhaps what it was like going to their grandparents' farm growing up and really get back to their roots. To start off with the resources, we're going to start with industry resources here. We have some different organizations that are great. Some are membership organizations, some you can reach out to. So we'll start with the North American Farmers Direct Marketing Association. Another name for them is Farmers Inspired. Many of you have likely heard that we are actually hosting the 2019 convention here in Noblesville. We're very thrilled for that opportunity. We hope you all can join us. Registration should be available on that closer to the end of the year, so stay tuned. Purdue Extension, great resource. They've come up with many documents and different programs to help farmers interested in diversifying into agritourism over the years. Roy Ballard, he's out of Greenfield and Hancock County. He really heads up their agritourism program, so he's another great person to talk with. There's others at Purdue as well. course, other states that are doing a great job with agritourism. And to find what a lot of these other states are doing, it's really just a quick Google search away. If you type in, for example, Tennessee agritourism, or Michigan, or Kentucky, or Vermont, there's several more that do an excellent job. You can get an idea of what resources that they're promoting. As I've been talking with operators across the state and across the country in the last year or so, one of the main concerns for their farms and their agritourism destinations is safety. So finding some safety resources that they can come up with some contingency plans, maybe an emergency plan. A great resource for that to share is safeagritourism.org. So many different resources there. I highly encourage you to check it out. And probably one of the most important, and I didn't add this to the slide, is other operators who have been working in this space for a long time. We have so many excellent examples across the state, and they have so much valuable advice that they can offer of what has worked well, what hasn't worked, what would they do differently if they could start over again. So that's very important, and I would highly encourage those operators that are just starting or thinking about starting agritourism to find other operators that are doing something similar to what they want to do and get to know them, ask them questions, and this will really help them. A good way to connect with those folks that are already doing agritourism and learn from them is to attend an agritourism conference. We have several in Indiana that focus on agritourism, and of course on the national level. I mentioned the Farmers Inspired Convention that'll be here in Indiana in 2018. That brings together the top-notch agritourism operators from across the country. I was able to go to this convention last year, and I was completely blown away by how willing everyone was to really open their doors and share so much information about what they're doing, because they all want to help each other. There's so much value in that type of organization, and it's really the perfect time to join since it'll be here next year. Back in Indiana, we have the Indiana Horticulture Congress. You may hear this referred to as Hort Congress, and that and the Indiana Small Farms Conference are both in the wintertime, and both of those bring together agritourism operators from our state. There are some other focuses of the conference as well, but a good way to connect with those folks. The fruit and vegetable growers, they each have their own group through Purdue. The wineries have the Wine and Grape Council through Purdue, the Brewers Guild for the breweries, and several other associations that really focus on specific activities. So I would definitely recommend that operators get involved in those and learn from their colleagues. On the state level, we developed a strategy, so ISBA in coordination with the Indiana Office of Tourism Development. This happened about 2 years ago. We rolled the strategy out last summer, and as you can see on your screen, we focused on 3 key areas: policy and regulatory, education, and consumer marketing. Now, the strategy itself, I'm not going to go too in-depth on that today because we don't have the time, but all of that is online on the ISBA Agritourism website. So the address for the URL for that is on your screen. So I recommend checking that out if you have not heard us speak about it before. But we'll break that down into the specific areas. Policy and regulatory is one of the most challenging for operators. And this is primarily because every county governs differently when it comes to zoning and home rule. So someone in Boone County who's doing agritourism may not have the same requirements as somebody in Hamilton County, for example. So even talking to other fellow operators across county lines doesn't always mean that you're going to have the same requirements. To help bridge this gap, ISBA created a local zoning and permitting guide for agritourism operators that is relatively new and is on the website. The same URL as was on the previous page. And this really breaks down this breaks down each county into several different areas with contact information for different groups that these operators should contact. From the county health department, where they'll need to go if they're offering food, they're selling food on the farm. The Chamber of Commerce, which is great for business development assistance. Area Plan Commission. In some counties, it's the building department where they need to go for zoning. Some counties don't have zoning, so there's that as well. We reached out to all 92 counties, and many of them responded with information related to how they regulate each of those each of the major agritourism activities. So you'll find farm markets, wineries, breweries, Christmas tree farms, U-Pick, fall activities, and more in there. So we're hoping that'll be very helpful to help people get started and ease the confusion of where they need to go. Of course, conversations with local decision makers, talking about agritourism, talking about what it looks like in their community and how it really fits into economic development. As I was calling around to all the 92 counties, it amazed me that so many of them said, oh, well, we don't have agritourism in our area. We don't need to be part of your guide, when I can name off 3 or 4 of them just on the edge of that county seat. So with that in mind, there is a huge opportunity for education here. And that is also part of that's basically phase 2 of our state strategy, is to reach out to these local decision makers in the counties and help them better understand what agritourism is, what it looks like in their area, and why it matters economically to their county. Another challenge is liability insurance. I hear this in almost every phone call I get from an agritourism operator. Their agent either doesn't understand what they're doing, they don't want to cover a certain activity, they moved their pumpkin patch and now they have to take a wagon ride quarter mile on the road and they're not going to cover that. So it's very important that agritourism operators reach out to their insurance agents early and keep them informed of what they're doing. Make sure that they fully understand not only the farm itself, but the agritourism component. There are other state agencies that we've been partnering with that have several resources as well, so I wanted to highlight some of those today. For both of these, I'd recommend reaching out to the agencies since they have the information on their website, starting with Indiana Small Business Development Center. It's so important to have a business plan when you're starting any new venture. Agritourism is no exception. So the Indiana Small Business Development Center has liaisons across the state and several staff in Indianapolis that can provide assistance when developing business plans, thinking about your marketing strategy, all of those things that really need to happen at the beginning of this process. They can provide some assistance to you there. The Indiana Department of Workforce Development has several webinars. They have some grants. They have some other programs that help with training for both on the employer side and on the employee side. So labor is also an issue on many of these agritourism farms, especially for those that are seasonal, getting people to come back year after year. Of course, there's a core group usually of loyal employees, but then it can be a challenge to find others in some cases. So this is a great resource. And again, I'd recommend going to each of their websites to learn more about what resources that they have. As we move on to consumer marketing, these 2 brochures may be familiar to many of you. We rolled these out a partnership between ISDA and state tourism during the state fair last year, and these have been very, very popular. So we have the winery and brewery guide that has also expanded to include distilleries, meaderies, and cideries, and then we have the general agritourism guide that includes your Christmas tree farms, your fall activities, including your corn mazes, and really it encompasses the rest of the agritourism landscape there. You can download these, visit indiana.com/agritourism, and that's also where you can find several different destinations across the state. You can search by category. The purpose of this part of the strategy and this website is to help our visitors, help our consumers find these destinations. We know they're interested in getting out to the farm, learning about local food, seeing how their food is grown, and we want to help bridge the gap and make it easier for them to find those places and connect them with those farmers. So keeping this short and sweet, we want to make sure there's time for questions and to be respectful of your time today. But some major considerations for new operators. We talked about the business plan. So important. This should be step one with any new venture. If operators are not too sure of where to start with this, they can reach out to their Chamber of Commerce. Of course, the Indiana Office or Small Business Development Center, is an excellent resource, and they are more than happy to help. And in that business plan, they should outline their long-term goals. Ultimately, what do they want their destination to be? And then once they know that, they can put in place several other tactics to make that happen. Again, liability insurance and labor, so important. These are major challenges facing operators, and so the sooner they can start addressing those two things, get some resources for them, the better off that they will be. But agritourism is such an exciting area, and it's growing tremendously. Right now we have more than 300 agritourism operators across Indiana, and that is growing almost daily. So we're very excited to be part of that, and excited to provide some resources and some assistance to folks as they're navigating the space. So thank you.
All right, before we get to any questions you might have, our next webinar, I'll remind you, is Revamping Gulf Tourism in the Hoosier State, and that is August 28th at 11 a.m. If you are interested in that or a recording of this webinar, those will be housed on the visitindianatourism.com website, and there is a shortened link here to get to it at bit.ly/IOTD webinars, all lowercase. So if you're interested, you can find those there. And if you have any questions, now would be the time to enter those. I've got a couple of questions for Kimmi. So just to get us started, Kimmi, I know that you went around the state and did a lot of like kind of a barnstorming tour and went around and talked with folks in the agritourism industry around the state. What was kind of the number one question that you got wherever you went? What was the most common thing that people asked about?
Excellent question, Kyla. The most common question we got was, how do people get started? A lot of people, they'll try to get started and then they'll run into some roadblocks, generally with the zoning process. If they need to rezone, with the permitting, they don't know who they need to talk to, and so our goal is to help connect them with that. So as we went around the state during our regional stakeholder meetings last summer, we were able to facilitate a listening session to hear what some of the challenges operators were facing, and some of those challenges also came from CVBs and other stakeholders that work with them that they were hearing in their area. So we took all of this, and we've been using that to guide our resource development.
You mentioned in your presentation the brochures that we have, the agritourism brochure and the wineries and breweries brochure. We are actually in the process of updating those. I can tell you that I believe the winery and brewery brochure is going to become a booklet, just because we've added that many locations to that. So we will have that, I believe, for the state fair this year. So if you are interested in coming out to the state fair and to work our booth, we are in the Wine and Spirits Pavilion at the State Fair right on Main Street, and it's a great location. We actually had a lot of families in there last year coming in for a place to eat out of the heat. Didn't really mean to rhyme there, but we did. And it's a great spot, and we actually have spots for people to work that booth. You get booth space at the State Fair, thousands of people coming across the table, and it's free of charge. We do not charge for you to use that space. If you're interested in that, let us know, and we can get you signed up. So, Kimmi, are there any other questions that you got a lot, or were there any unique questions that that stick out to you from your time going around the state?
We got a lot of different questions. A lot of them stick out, but one that really stuck out to me was more of a comment from a very frustrated agritourism operator. He has a corn maze, and because he rotates where the pumpkin patch is every year, he had to make the hay ride about 1/8 of a mile down the road, and that was causing a lot of problems with his liability insurance. So that has also guided us as we develop resources, been talking to some of the insurance companies, trying to figure out what role that we can play in this process and how we can best help them. But after that, I continue to hear a lot more frustrations from people that either they're, like I said earlier, their agent doesn't fully understand what they're doing, they may not know what they're doing, so inviting them out to the farm I think is a great first step. They can see it for themselves. Making sure that they're covered is so important. Of course, there are so many inherent risks because the farm, you're outside, there are little, you could easily trip and twist your ankle or something like that. So you need to make sure that you're covered with liability.
All right. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat, so we will adjourn and let you head off to lunch. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will send out an email later today with a recording of the webinar if you want to share this with any agritourism partners in your area if you're a CVB, or if you have any colleagues if you're a agritourism provider. Again, we want to thank Kimmi, and thank you, Kimmi, and we look forward to having you communicate with our agritourism folks in the future.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right.